All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for being here. Today, I want to inform you on the process of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, also known as CPR, in the pre-hospital setting. In the hospital setting, you've got doctors and nurses and all different kinds of people who monitor your patients, hopefully pretty regularly. Not always true, but hopefully. However, in the pre-hospital setting, you've got different settings, different scenarios, different surroundings, different factors that may or may not contribute to sudden cardiac arrest. The specific purpose of this speech is to simply inform you of how it is done, how to recognize an event, how to start it, how to stop it, and how it's done officially. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation is a series of life-saving actions that improves the chance of survival following cardiac arrest. That comes from the Advanced Cardiovascular Life Support class book that is made by the American Heart Association and used across most of the United States for the teaching of ACLS and PALS, which is the Pediatric Advanced Life Support. Although there are different approaches to CPR, the fundamentals of effective CPR is quick recognition of a cardiac event and the willingness to start CPR and continue it until emergency response arrives. The American Heart Association states that 4 out of 5 cardiac arrest events happen in the home or in the workplace. Failure for bystanders to act in these situations results in unnecessary human deaths. American Heart Association also states that a victim who experiences sudden cardiac arrest has double or triple the chance of survival if CPR is started by a bystander before the emergency response system is activated. Sadly, only 32% of cardiac arrest victims have bystander CPR, resulting in an 8% survival rate across the United States following a cardiac event. The central idea of this speech is to simply explain the process and importance of CPR, not to influence you to take CPR, but to give you a better understanding that if it were to happen, that you know how to do it, to start it quick, and to be able and willing to continue it until emergency services arrives. The first thing when recognizing a cardiac event or when needing to do CPR is the recognition of a cardiac event. If you find somebody that is unresponsive on the floor, the first thing you want to do is you quickly glance around the room or around if you're in a field or wherever to see if there's a contributing factor. In other words, is there a gun laying on the side of the patient, or is there a pill bottle, or is there something that could have contributed to why the patient is in this situation? The next thing you want to do is assess for radial or carotid pulse. Carotid is here, radial is here. Very quick, yes or no, you can usually determine very quickly. Even if you think you don't feel a pulse, it's better to go ahead and start CPR. It's not going to hurt. Second thing is if you walk in your room and you find your mom or your aunt or anybody laying in a bed and they won't get up, that's another thing. That's another contributing factor. If you're familiar with the patient and you can't get them to rouse up, just quickly think, is there anything medically wise that could contribute to this? Have they had a heart attack? Do they have diabetes? Do they have seizures? Do they have COPD or respiratory problems or anything like that? And while you're doing this, all the while, once again, be feeling for a pulse and looking at the chest for chest rise and fall. You can tell very quickly if someone's not breathing, they have no chest rise and fall. The third situation is if you come around the corner in a mall or you walk outside and you just suddenly stumble upon somebody who's unresponsive, you didn't witness it, anything like that. You want to glance around the situation to see if the scene is safe. Make sure there's nobody standing in the corner with a gun, or nobody standing in the corner with a knife, or a tree hadn't fell on somebody. You just want to make sure it's safe before you approach the victim. Once you do, once again, check for chest rise and fall, and check for a carotid pulse. And anytime you witness, say if I'm looking at you and you fall unresponsive, any of these situations, you immediately need to approach the patient. If it's safe for you, you're number one. Assess for a pulse and assess for chest rise and fall. This is a quick assessment. This entire assessment between noticing you have a problem, checking a pulse, checking for chest rise and fall should only take 20 seconds or less. You can do all these things at one time, basically. The next thing you want to think about is CPR an option for this victim? Is there an obvious contributing death factor such as loss of a limb or extreme blood loss or extreme trauma that you witnessed that you pretty much know without all doubt that there's nothing that can be done? If not, feel the patient. While you're doing all this, is the patient cold to the touch? Is the patient warm? Do they look like they've been down a while? Don't be afraid to touch them and just see what's going on. Next thing you want to do, if you're not willing to do CPR or the victim does not look like they need CPR, immediately activate the emergency response system. Call 911. Stay with the patient to ensure that the patient remains safe and the scene remains safe so you can tell them what you saw when they get there. If you are willing to do CPR, start immediately. If you have somebody by you, start CPR, don't ask them, but demand. You need to call 911. You need to do this, you need to do that. Don't ask, because it may not get done. If you are alone, first thing you need to do is get somebody in the way that knows what they're doing. So by trying to limit your time away from the patient, call 911 as quick as you can and get back on that chest. The third thing is administration of CPR. When you recognize that you have a problem, CPR is an option, 911 is on the way. Begin with chest compressions. Your hand placement should be dead center of the chest, just above the breast line. Push hard and fast, at least 1/3 the depth of the chest. So depending on a big or small patient, you may have to push hard. When you push, align your shoulders dead in line with your hands. It gives you more leverage on the patient. And if it's available, to avoid exhaustion, rotate out. If you do a set, let somebody else do a set. Don't sit there and kill yourself. The second thing is ventilation. CPR is a process of compressions and ventilation. If you have a bag valve mask or a CPR mask available, you deliver 2 breaths just until you notice chest rise following every 30 compressions. If you're not willing to do ventilation, say if you have bare mouth, you don't have a mask, then just do constant chest compressions. This is a CPR mask available. You can buy them at any drugstore or anything. It's a one-way valve that goes over your patient's mouth. It lets air in but doesn't let anything that comes up out. Another one is this tight. It simply goes on a keychain. Same way. When you unfold it, it's got a one-way valve that you can breathe in, but they can't breathe any fluids or anything out onto you. If you have an AED available, automated external defibrillator, follow the instructions. When you open it, it's going to tell you, this is what you need to do. You turn it on, it's going to tell you, this is what you need to do. It's going to assess that patient, assess the heart rhythm, and tell them what you need to do. The last thing is discontinuation of CPR efforts. Say you have a patient in full-blown cardiac arrest, you just witnessed it, you started CPR, you don't want to stop. You don't. My paramedic instructor used to always tell me 30 seconds without compression equals death. Once you start, that heart has been down for a certain period of time, and it takes so much to get it back going again. It's like a vehicle. If it breaks down, when it starts back up, you got to give it a minute. So if you stop and that heart goes back to that resting state, it's going to take twice as much to get it back together. So in other words, if you're safe, your scene is safe, and you can avoid extreme physical or emotional exhaustion, do not stop until somebody gets there. Now when somebody does get there, whether it's a police officer, firefighter, EMT, or whatever that knows what they're doing, step back and let them do it. But inform them of how long they've been down, how long you've done, how many cycles you've done. 1 cycle of CPR is 30 compressions and 2 breaths. 5 cycles of CPR should be done in a total of 2 minutes if that tells you how fast. Average of 100 compressions a minute. I want to share a personal story with you real quick on CPR. We had a fire chief in the county who was discussing with his fireman that he was having chest pain. Well, they told him to go across the parking lot and see his doctor, family doctor. He walked across the parking lot and fell dead of cardiac arrest. His fireman jumped on his chest. He was without a pulse for 42 minutes, and he's still the fire chief. He stayed pulseless for 32 minutes, but he had CPR, 42 minutes, but he had CPR within 30 seconds of him falling, and he's no deficits at all. So, in conclusion, CPR is one of the things that a lot of people seem interested in, but nobody's willing to do. Everyone has the ability to take a simple understanding of this 30 to 2, that's all you have to remember. And you can save a life with it. Bottom line, you just can. So don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to touch what you think is a dead person, because you have the potential of saving their life. Through the knowledge and understanding of CPR and the willingness to recognize an event, alert emergency services, start CPR, and continue CPR until emergency services arrive, you can triple a person's chance of survival following a cardiac event. According to the Primo 2011, that's a EMT paramedic review book, rates of survival to hospital discharge after cardiac arrest, once again, are best for those who arrest in home or public places where bystander CPR is available. Once again, I want to thank you for your time, and I appreciate you being here.